Tokyo, early autumn, 1971. The rain had stopped an hour earlier, but the city still smelled like it hadn't made up its mind. Wet concrete, old wood, cigarette smoke trapped beneath neon signs that buzzed even in daylight. Somewhere below the elevated tracks, a door slid open. Bruce Lee stepped inside without ceremony. No entourage, no cameras, no announcement. Just a man in a dark jacket, canvas bag slung over one shoulder, eyes already scanning the space before his feet fully crossed the threshold. The dojo was hidden above a tea warehouse in Shinagawa, the kind of place you only found if someone wanted you there. Polished wooden floors worn thin by decades of repetition. Paper lanterns along the walls, soft light diffused through rice paper. The air carried the faint scent of incense and old steel. This was not a gym. This was a place where people came to test what they believed about themselves. The conversations didn't stop when Bruce entered. They didn't need to. This wasn't Los Angeles. No loud laughter, no obvious stares. Just subtle shifts. A pause in breath. A change in posture. The way trained bodies respond when something unfamiliar enters their space. Bruce felt it immediately. He always did. A few men in traditional kukogi knelt near the far wall, folding their hakama with ritual precision. Others stood barefoot, hands tucked into sleeves, speaking in low voices that carried respect, even when they carried doubt. Bruce moved quietly, each step placed as if the floor itself had asked permission. He had come to Tokyo to meet producers, to discuss distribution, to argue contracts that never seemed to favor the man whose face sold the tickets. But this meeting, this place, was not on any official schedule. This was an invitation, and invitations like this were never accidental. At the center of the dojo stood a woman. She was not tall, not imposing in the way Western fighters understood power. But there was something about the way she stood, feet aligned, spine vertical, weight balanced so perfectly, it looked effortless. A katana rested in her hands, not raised, not threatening, simply present. The blade was old. That much Bruce could tell from 10 paces away. The steel had that muted sheen that came from care, not polish. A weapon that had been used, cleaned, respected, and never displayed for admiration. Her hair was tied back, severe and practical. No ornaments. No softness. Her face was calm, but not empty. The calm of someone who had learned to quiet emotion, not eliminate it. This was Aiko Tanaka, and everyone in that room knew exactly who she was. She was not a performer, not a novelty, not a demonstration act for tourists. She was a swordmaster trained in a lineage that traced back before modern Japan existed, a family that had never stopped teaching, even when the world decided swords were obsolete. They said she had never lost a formal challenge. They said she had broken wrists through armor with wooden blades. They said she once disarmed a drunken yakuza without drawing blood and left him kneeling, crying, because she made him understand how close he had come to dying. Bruce did not know all of that, but he knew enough. Their eyes met. For a brief moment, neither moved. Aiko inclined her head slightly. Not a bow. An acknowledgement. "You are early," she said in measured English. "I prefer it that way," Bruce replied. His voice was calm, quiet, carrying just enough confidence to be heard without needing to assert itself. She studied him openly now, not rudely, clinically, the way one examines a tool before deciding how to use it. "You are smaller than I expected," she said. The words weren't cruel. They weren't friendly either. They were an observation, delivered the way a physician might describe a patient's pulse. Bruce smiled faintly. "So I'm told." A murmur passed through the room, barely audible, but present. This was already different from what many had expected. Aiko shifted her grip on the katana, rotating the blade just enough that the light traced its edge. "You have built a reputation," she said. "In Hong Kong. In America." "Reputations are stories," Bruce answered. "Stories change depending on who tells them." Her lips tightened slightly. Not irritation. Interest. "They say you believe weapons are unnecessary," she continued. "That the body alone is sufficient." Bruce set his canvas bag down near the wall and rolled his shoulders once, loosening them. "I believe," he said carefully, "that the weapon extends the person. But the person must already understand force, timing, and intention. Otherwise, the weapon becomes a liability. Several heads turned. This was not a casual statement in a room where steel had been worshipped for centuries. Aiko did not react immediately. She stepped forward instead, the katana still low, her movement smooth enough that the blade barely whispered through the air. "You are aware," she said, "that my discipline exists precisely because unarmed men believed the same thing." Bruce nodded. "And many of them were right," he said, "until they weren't." The room went still. Aiko stopped 3 paces from him. Close enough now that Bruce could see the faint callus lines along her palms, the hands of someone who trained daily, relentlessly. "You have been invited here," she said, "because some believe your ideas challenge our tradition. And others?" Bruce asked. "Others believe," she said, "that tradition exists to be challenged." A long silence followed. Rain began again outside, light at first, tapping against the windows like a distant metronome. "You came here to test something," Bruce said. "Yes," Aiko replied. "So did I." She considered him for a moment longer, then turned slightly toward the watching practitioners. "He says," she announced, "that the body can overcome the blade. No exaggeration, no drama, just a statement placed carefully into the room." A few men exchanged glances. One older master frowned. Another leaned forward, intrigued. "And you believe," Bruce added, "that distance, steel, and tradition make the outcome inevitable?" Aiko's gaze returned to him. "I believe," she said, "that reality reveals itself when belief is no longer enough." Bruce smiled, not wide, not amused, focused. "Then we agree." Aiko lifted the katana, not into a strike, into readiness. The air in the dojo changed instantly, the way it always does when a real weapon comes alive in trained hands. The blade aligned with her center line, tip angled forward, her posture narrowing, sharpening. She was no longer a woman holding a sword. She was a system. Bruce did not move. No stance, no guard, hands relaxed at his sides. Someone near the wall inhaled sharply. Unarmed, barefoot, facing steel. "This is not a demonstration," Aiko said quietly. "You understand that?" "I do," Bruce replied. "You could be injured. Yes, you could be killed." Bruce met her eyes. "So could you." A ripple went through the room at that. Not outrage, recognition. Aiko exhaled slowly. "Then," she said, "we will proceed." She stepped back 1 pace, then another, creating space. The floor between them suddenly felt vast, like the empty space between 2 cliffs. "No armor," she said. "None," Bruce agreed. "No theatrics, only truth." The circle formed without instruction, silent, respectful. Everyone present understood they were about to witness something that would not be repeated. Aiko settled into her stance, weight evenly distributed, blade poised. Bruce shifted his feet, not into defense, but into alignment. Spine tall, knees soft. His body looked loose, almost careless, but there was something coiled beneath it. Like a spring disguised the stillness, Aiko watched him carefully. "You do not fear the blade," she observed. "I respect it," Bruce said. "Fear wastes time." The rain outside grew heavier. Aiko's grip tightened imperceptibly. "Very well." The blade moved. Not fast. Precise. The first cut was exploratory. A diagonal slice aimed not to kill, but to measure distance, reaction, instinct. Bruce stepped not back, not sideways but slightly inside the arc of the blade, his torso turning just enough that steel passed through empty space where his ribs had been a moment earlier. Gasps, suppressed but real. Aiko did not pause. The second cut came immediately, reversed angle, faster now, sharper. This time aimed for commitment. Bruce's hand rose not to block, but to guide his palm, brushing the flat of the blade with impossible delicacy, redirecting its path by inches. Metal sang. The sound echoed through the dojo like a struck bell. Aiko's eyes widened, not in fear, but in shock. No one touched a live blade like that. No one sane. Bruce was already moving. Not away. Toward her. Bruce was already moving, not rushing, not lunging, just stepping into a place Aiko did not expect anyone to willingly occupy. Inside the sword's reach, the most dangerous space in the room, Aiko reacted instantly. She had to. Years of training snapped into place, muscle memory overriding surprise. The katana reversed direction in a tight, controlled motion, the blade whispering as it cut back across Bruce's center line, aimed where his throat would be. If he hesitated for even a fraction of a second, he didn't. Bruce rotated, not his feet first, not his shoulders, but his hips. The movement was subtle, almost invisible, yet it carried the rest of his body with it like a current pulling driftwood downstream. The blade passed so close to his collarbone that several people swore later they felt the air move. No contact, no retreat. Bruce was still advancing. This was wrong. Every instinct Aiko had been trained to trust told her that an unarmed opponent facing steel should be backing away, creating distance, hoping for an opening that would never come. Bruce did the opposite. He was collapsing distance. Aiko adjusted, pivoting on the ball of her foot, letting the blade lead as she turned, trying to keep the edge between them at all times. Her movements were textbook perfect, efficient, balanced, economical. This was not flashy swordplay. This was survival-grade precision, the kind taught to people who expected their techniques to be tested under real conditions. Bruce matched her without mirroring her. He was not copying her angles. He was cutting through them. Another slash. Horizontal this time, aimed midsection. Not a kill strike, but a warning. A statement. Bruce bent, not at the waist, but through the spine, his torso folding just enough to let the blade pass overhead. At the same time, his lead foot slid forward, closing the distance even further. The crowd was no longer breathing normally. Someone near the back realized their hands were clenched into fists. This wasn't a fight. It was a conversation conducted at lethal speed. Aiko felt it now, the shift, the unsettling realization that Bruce was not reacting to her sword. He was anticipating it. She changed tempo. The next strike came faster, sharper. A committed cut meant to end the exchange. The blade flashed toward Bruce's shoulder, powered by her entire body, hips driving, arms relaxed but precise. This time, Bruce did not evade fully. He stepped diagonally forward, inside the strike, his forearm rising to intercept not the edge, but the flat, his contact feather-light yet exact. The steel vibrated under the touch, its trajectory altered just enough that the cut skimmed past him instead of through him. Aiko's breath caught. No one intercepted a live blade bare-handed like that. Not without losing fingers, not without blood. Bruce's fingers were exactly where they needed to be, no more, no less. He released immediately, as if the sword were molten, and then he was close enough that Aiko could see her own reflection in his eyes. She stepped back sharply, resetting, blade up again, posture tight now, no longer testing, no longer curious, focused. "You move," she said, voice steady but changed, "as if you do not acknowledge the danger." "I acknowledge it completely," Bruce replied. "That's why I don't fight it." She attacked again. This time, there was no restraint. The cuts came in a flowing sequence, diagonal, horizontal, thrust each designed to force Bruce backward, to reclaim space, to reassert the fundamental truth of steel versus flesh. Bruce gave her none. He slipped between strikes, his body threading through gaps that seemed too small to exist. His hands rose only when necessary, never blocking, never meeting force with force, only redirecting, guiding, dissolving the blade's intent before it could complete itself. From the outside, it looked unreal. From inside the circle, it was terrifying. Aiko began to breathe harder, not from exertion, but from calculation. She was working harder now, adjusting angles, altering rhythm, searching for a pattern that would trap him. There was none. Bruce was not fighting her sword. He was fighting her timing, and he was winning. She feinted high, then dropped low, the blade snapping toward his knee, a brutal, disabling cut. Bruce hopped not back, but up and in his foot, clearing the arc of the blade by inches, his body landing almost chest to chest with her. For the first time, Aiko broke distance without choosing to. She retreated 2 steps, blade rising defensively. Bruce stopped. Right there. He did not pursue. The sudden stillness was louder than the steel. "You're choosing power," he said quietly. "Over control." Aiko stared at him, blade steady, breath measured but heavier now. "You're assuming," she replied, "that control survives contact." Bruce nodded. "That's the assumption I trained to remove." She lunged, a straight thrust this time, fast and direct, aimed at the center of his chest. No flourish, no ceremony, just the shortest path between intent and outcome. Bruce moved offline at the last possible instant, his torso rotating, his lead hand guiding the blade past his ribs, his rear foot stepping deep into her space. His other hand came up, not to strike, to place, his palm pressed lightly against her forearm, just above the wrist, not stopping the sword, but freezing the system that powered it. At the same time, his shoulder aligned with her center line, his hips snapping forward in a compact motion that transferred force through his frame and into her balance. Aiko stumbled, not dramatically, but enough to break posture, enough to create an opening that should never exist in sword combat. The room reacted as one, a breath sucked in, a collective realization. This was no longer theoretical. Bruce was inside her guard, and he still hadn't struck her. Aiko recovered quickly, too quickly for anyone but a master, twisting her wrist, pulling the blade back, stepping away to reset. They faced each other again, sweat now visible along her hairline. "You are dangerous," she said. Bruce inclined his head slightly. "So is your sword." "You could end this," she said, "if you strike." Bruce's gaze did not leave her center. "And you could end it," he replied, "if I make a mistake." She studied him for a long moment. "You're not trying to defeat me," she realized. "I'm trying," Bruce said, "to show you something." Aiko exhaled slowly. "Then show me," she said. She changed stance. Lower now. Narrower. The blade angled differently, no longer traditional. Something adapted. Something personal. This was no longer lineage. This was Aiko Tanaka. She moved again. Faster than before. Not reckless, decisive. Bruce met her movement with equal commitment. This time, when he stepped inside the strike, his hand came down, not on the blade, but on the flat of her forearm, just as her weight shifted forward. His fingers wrapped, not gripping, but connecting, his other hand contacting her elbow, creating a brief but complete control of her weapon arm. For half a second, the sword was irrelevant. Bruce's body aligned. Hips, spine, ground. A short, sharp pulse of force traveled through him, from foot to palm and into her structure. Aiko was lifted, not thrown, unrooted. Her feet left the floor for an instant before she landed hard, sliding backward across the polished wood, the katana skittering from her grip and clattering to a stop several feet away. The sound echoed, steel on wood, final. The dojo froze. Aiko lay still for a heartbeat, then rolled to one knee, one hand pressed to the floor, breath drawn deep and fast. Bruce stood where he had finished the movement, shoulders relaxed, hands already lowering. He had not followed her down. He had not struck. He had not claimed victory. He had simply stopped. Aiko looked up at him, not angry, not humiliated. "Awed. That," she said slowly, "should not be possible." Bruce took a step back, increasing the distance between them again. "Possibility," he said, "is defined by understanding." She glanced at the katana on the floor, then back at him. "You disarmed me," she said. "Yes, with no blade. Yes, with no strike. Yes." Silence stretched. Finally, Aiko rose fully to her feet. She walked to her sword, picked it up with both hands, and returned to the center of the floor. She did not raise it. She placed it carefully on the ground between them. The gesture carried weight. "I yield," she said. The words landed heavier than any strike. No one spoke, not immediately. The katana lay on the floor between them, perfectly still, its polished surface catching the lantern light. The weapon that had defined generations, the symbol of distance, authority, finality, set aside. Aiko Tanaka stood upright, hands relaxed at her sides, breath now controlled again. The tension that had sharpened her posture moments earlier was gone. not replaced by weakness, but by clarity. Bruce Lee faced her from several steps away, shoulders loose, gaze steady. He had already disengaged. The outcome, in his mind, had been decided the moment structure collapsed. The dojo remained frozen, as if everyone feared that movement might somehow undo what they had just witnessed. Finally, Aiko bowed. Not deeply, but sincerely. It was not submission, it was recognition. "You took my balance before you took my weapon," she said. "That is why I fell." Bruce returned the bow, matching her depth exactly. "Balance," he said, "is the weapon beneath all weapons." She nodded slowly, turning the idea over in her mind like a stone in water. "You never aimed to harm me," she said. "There was no need," Bruce replied. One of the older masters along the wall stepped forward. His hair was white, his posture bent slightly by time, but his eyes were sharp. "This was not how challenges were conducted," he said. His tone was not angry, it was careful. And yet, the result cannot be denied. Bruce met the man's gaze respectfully. "Traditions survive," he said, "because they adapt, not because they remain untouched." A murmur rippled through the room. Aiko turned to the elder. "He did not disrespect the blade," she said. "He understood it." The old man studied Bruce again, longer this time. "You did not seize the sword when it fell," he observed. Bruce shook his head. "That would have been unnecessary," he said, "and disrespectful." Aiko's lips curved slightly. Not a smile, exactly, but something close. "You see now," she said to the room, "why he was invited." The circle loosened. People exhaled. Someone shifted their weight for the first time in minutes. The tension broke, but the gravity remained. Aiko retrieved her sword from the floor and returned it to its resting stand. The ritual was precise, reverent. When she finished, she turned back to Bruce. "You fight as if the body were water," she said. "Always flowing, never meeting force directly." Bruce considered that. "Water," he said, "does not fight the blade. It moves where the blade is not." "And if there is nowhere to move?" "Then," Bruce replied, "the blade cuts itself off from purpose." She tilted her head slightly. "You believe weapons are obsolete." "I believe," Bruce said, "that weapons reveal what the user does not yet understand." She studied him again, this time without steel between them. "You trained many disciplines," she said. "Boxing, Wing Chun, Western fencing, and many philosophies," Bruce added. "Some complementary, some contradictory, yet you discarded them." Bruce shook his head. "I kept what worked," he said, "and released what didn't." Aiko crossed her arms loosely. "That is dangerous thinking." "Yes," Bruce agreed, "but stagnation is more dangerous." The elder master spoke again. "You came to Japan seeking contracts," he said, "but you leave having disrupted something older." Bruce smiled faintly. "I didn't come to disrupt," he said. "I came to understand." Aiko glanced around the room. "Understanding," she said quietly, "often disrupts." There was a pause. Then she gestured toward the floor. "Again," she said. A few heads snapped up. The elder master raised an eyebrow. "You have already yielded," he said. "I yielded," Aiko replied, "to the outcome, not the lesson." She faced Bruce squarely. "I want to understand," she said. "What you did, not the result, but the process." Bruce hesitated. This was the part he disliked. Demonstration without context invited misunderstanding. Spectacle without discipline created myths detached from truth. But he also knew that moments like this did not repeat themselves. "Very well," he said. He stepped back into the center of the dojo, motioning for Aiko to stand opposite him unarmed this time. "No sword," she said, confirming. "No sword," Bruce agreed. She complied. They stood facing each other, equal distance, equal footing. "Your mistake," Bruce said gently, "was not speed, or technique, or commitment." Aiko listened intently. "It was expectation." She frowned slightly. "You expected the blade to create certainty," he continued. "You expected distance to protect you. That is what swords are for." Yes, Bruce said, against people who react. He shifted his stance subtly. But I wasn't reacting, he continued. I was intercepting intention. He raised his hand, not striking, placing it inches from her shoulder. When you decided to cut, he said, your body already committed. Before the blade moved, your center moved. Before your center moved, your breath changed. Aiko's eyes widened slightly. You were reading that? Yes. She exhaled. And the moment I noticed, she said slowly, it was already too late. Bruce nodded. That is why speed is less important than timing, he said, and timing is less important than perception. One of the younger practitioners spoke up. You're saying strength doesn't matter? Bruce turned toward him. Strength always matters, he said, but not in isolation. He walked to the side of the dojo and picked up a wooden bokken resting against the wall. He held it out, grip relaxed. The sword, he said, is powerful. He handed it to the young man. Now swing it at me. The young man hesitated, then complied, delivering a cautious downward strike. Bruce stepped aside easily. Again, he said. This time the strike was faster. Again, Bruce was not there. Harder, Bruce said. The third strike came with full commitment. Bruce stepped in, not away, his hand contacting the attacker's forearm, his body aligning, and with a minimal movement, he redirected the swing and took the young man's balance, guiding him safely to the floor. The room reacted softly this time, not shocked now, but attentive. Bruce helped the man up immediately. Power, he said to the room, is not what you generate, it is what you allow to pass through you without resistance. Aiko watched closely. When you touched my arm, she said, it felt as though my strength vanished. Bruce nodded, because you were no longer controlling it. She folded her arms again, thoughtful. My training taught me to dominate space, she said, to command distance. And mine, Bruce replied, taught me to dissolve it. A silence settled, not tense, but contemplative. The elder master approached Bruce and bowed deeply this time. You have not dishonored our tradition, he said. You have reminded us why it exists. Bruce returned the bow. Traditions, he said, are living things. They breathe through the people who practice them. Aiko stepped beside the elder. You came here as a challenger, she said, but you leave as a mirror. Bruce smiled faintly. Mirrors, he said, don't teach, they reveal. Outside, the rain finally stopped. The city resumed its rhythm. Inside the dojo, something fundamental had shifted, and everyone present knew it. This was not a story they would repeat lightly. The dojo did not return to normal when the exchange ended. There was no applause, no excited chatter, no rush to reinterpret what had just happened. People moved more slowly now, as if speed itself had been quietly questioned. Bruce sat near the wall, legs folded, back resting lightly against a wooden pillar. The canvas bag lay beside him, untouched. He wiped his hands with a small towel, movements unhurried, already mentally elsewhere. Across the room, Aiko Tanaka knelt in seiza, her katana placed before her, edge turned inward, handle aligned perfectly with her center. Her posture was formal, but her eyes were distant, focused on something no one else could see. She was replaying it. Every step, every misjudgment, every moment where certainty had slipped through her fingers. The elder master watched her carefully. You are unsettled, he said. She nodded once. I believed the blade guaranteed outcome, she replied. Tonight, it did not. The elder folded his hands into his sleeves. The blade, he said, has never guaranteed anything. It only amplifies what already exists. Aiko looked up. And what existed in him? She asked. The elder turned his gaze toward Bruce. Clarity. Bruce stood a moment later, sensing rather than hearing that attention had returned to him. He approached Aiko quietly, stopping at a respectful distance. You asked to understand, he said. Do you still? She met his eyes. Yes. He nodded. Then let's speak honestly, he said. Not as challenger and defender, but as practitioners. She inclined her head. Please. Bruce gestured toward the katana. You trained your whole life to master that, he said, which means you trained your body to obey the sword. Yes, I trained, Bruce continued, To make the body the sword. Aiko, consider this. You believe the weapon should disappear. No, Bruce said. I believe it should become unnecessary. She frowned slightly. In war, she said, necessity is not optional. Bruce agreed. But war, he said, is chaos, and chaos punishes rigidity. She absorbed that in silence. When you attacked, Bruce continued, your technique was flawless. Your timing was excellent. Your commitment was total. Then why did it fail? Bruce crouched slightly, placing his hand flat on the floor. Because your strength traveled in straight lines, he said, and mine traveled in curves. She blinked. Explain. Straight lines, Bruce said, are fast, powerful, direct, but they require the target to remain where it is. He shifted his hand, drawing a subtle arc across the wood. Curves adapt. Aiko exhaled slowly. You entered my space before my mind accepted it. Yes, and by the time I recognized the threat, she said, my body had already committed. Yes. She nodded once, sharply. Then the failure was not my sword, she said. It was my assumption. Bruce smiled faintly. Assumptions are the most dangerous opponents, he said. They fight from inside you. The elder master approached again. You speak of philosophy, he said, but your body moves faster than thought. How did you train that? Bruce looked thoughtful. I stopped trying to win, he said, and started trying to understand. Aiko looked up quickly. You mean you abandoned victory? I abandoned attachment to outcome, Bruce replied. Victory became a side effect. The room was quiet again. Someone near the wall shifted uncomfortably. This was not how fighters were taught to think. And if you had misjudged? Aiko asked. If the blade had touched you? Bruce did not hesitate. Then I would have learned, he said. She stared at him. That is not fearlessness, she said. That is acceptance. Bruce nodded. Fear, he said, comes from trying to control what cannot be controlled. Aiko bowed deeply now, not to the result, to the philosophy. I have trained my students to master distance, she said. I have taught them that the sword creates safety. She looked up. I see now that safety is an illusion. Bruce returned the bow. So is danger, he said. They are both stories we tell ourselves. Outside, evening settled over Tokyo. Neon lights flickered on. Trains passed. Life continued, unaware that something subtle had shifted above a tea warehouse in Shinagawa. One of the younger practitioners approached Bruce hesitantly. Sensei, he said, choosing the word instinctively, does this mean swords are useless? Bruce smiled gently. No, he said. It means swords are honest. The young man looked confused. They reveal your timing, Bruce continued. Your fear, your intention, your rigidity. He tapped his chest lightly. Just like the body does. Aiko stood. She walked to Bruce and stopped before him. You defeated me, she said plainly. Bruce shook his head. No, he said. You defeated what you believed could not be defeated. She considered that. Will you stay? She asked. Teach? Bruce paused. He thought of studios waiting for him. Contracts, cameras, arguments about screen time and credit. I won't stay, he said finally. Aiko nodded. I thought you might say that. But, Bruce added, I'll leave you with something. He stepped into the center of the dojo again and stood perfectly still. Watch, he said. No stance. No tension. Just presence. Then, without warning, his body shifted. Not fast, not slow. Complete. Every joint aligned. Every muscle cooperated. Every ounce of force traveled cleanly from ground to center to space in front of him. The air seemed to compress. Nothing broke. Nothing moved. Yet everyone felt it. Bruce relaxed again instantly. That, he said, is what I practice. The elder master bowed deeply. You have given us a difficult gift, he said. Bruce returned the bow. Growth, he replied, is always difficult. Aiko watched him as he retrieved his canvas bag and moved toward the door. When people ask, she said, what happened here tonight? What should I tell them? Bruce stopped at the doorway and turned. Tell them, he said, that steel met water. And that water didn't break. He slid the door open. The city noise rushed in. And then he was gone. Years later, people would tell the story differently. Some would say the sword never truly threatened him. Others would insist the match never happened at all, but those who were there remembered the silence. They remembered how certainty failed, and they remembered the moment they realized that strength, when misunderstood, can be defeated without a single blow.